So what is the missing link of your self-actualization journey? Why is it that so many people, when they do inner work, when they do shadow work, when they've done meditation, when they're building more practical skill sets, when they're doing all of these things, why is it that so many people feel like their external world does not reflect the internal progress that they have made? Because this is an extremely, extremely common problem that I see in all the clients that I work with and all the people that I speak to who are interested in this stuff. So what is it? Well, what we're going to be getting into today is the art of boundary setting, the full and comprehensive guide to boundary setting with 4 steps. There's only 4 steps that you really need to know. This is an absolutely key practice. It's not the only practice, but it is an essential practice to be able to take all of this stuff in here and to project it out into the world in the way that you want to, with clarity, with decisiveness, and also with alignment to who you have become. So this is Aaron from Self-Actualization Systems, if you haven't seen me before. And this is going to be one of the videos where it's going to be a real big picture, comprehensive guide with specifics that are actually actionable and practical. So by the end of this video, you'll actually not only just have the knowledge, but actually have a practical guide to be able to do the things that you want to do, aka take all of the progress that you made here and have it on the outside world. So the first thing we're going to be getting into, which is the most important, which is I'm going to make a guess, even though I don't know who you are. And my guess is if you clicked on this video, if this message is resonating to you, it means that you probably fall more on the agreeable side than the disagreeable side of the spectrum. So I'm going to introduce what this spectrum is. I'm going to go through the strengths and weakness and the key insights of what agreeable versus disagreeable people are. But most importantly, what this section is here to do is to make sure that you have the key simple, not necessarily easy, but simple mindset shift to take you from maybe feeling guilty around setting boundaries, around owning your own space, to having that just be very effortless and natural. People who are more agreeable, like myself actually, they tend to value the group harmony more than what they want for themselves, okay? Now when this is done in a very healthy manner, it just means that you're able to hold space for the group, able to allow everyone to feel heard in that group, whilst still owning your own healthy desires and wants. For people who struggle with boundaries, they don't have that second part. So they have all of the good stuff from the beginning of the agreeable. So they're great in teams, they're very team orientated, which means actually the skill ceiling for a leader can be quite high, a team leader, because you understand the needs of the many a bit more naturally than over the needs of the few. However, I do want to be clear here right now, just because somebody is agreeable doesn't mean that they are just better in these environments. It's also a skill thing that you have to develop, and it just means it's a way that your mind naturally leans, okay? So someone can be more extroverted, but that doesn't mean that they're naturally good socially, or it doesn't even mean that they can't be shy. It just means that naturally they get more energy from people, from being around people. It doesn't have anything to do with the skill development. So people who are more agreeable work great in teams. They can diffuse conflict, which is also great in teams. And the good thing about working together and having collaboration and being coordinated is you can go much further with a group of trusted people around you than without. So people who are more disagreeable, they're more individualistic, they're more comfortable with saying what they want and going after what they want without having to check with everybody. So this can make them very dynamic, it can make them very mobile, it can also make them be very decisive. What I mean by this is they can just make decisions on the fly without checking in with everybody, which is sometimes what is needed. However, the thing that they run into later on in their career of life, whatever you want to call it, what they struggle with is the fact that you can only go so far most of the time as an individual. And if you are bad at holding social connections, it means you have to find a new social connection every year, every few months, depending on the burn rate. But once that bridge is burned, it's gone forever. This is also, I'm talking about in the very extreme. So for people who are more agreeable, first of all, I want to say what the strengths are. The reason why I'm saying this is because there's so much stuff, especially for guys. Being agreeable is like a bad thing. Like in order to be alpha, you have to be disagreeable. Let's just stop that right now. Even in the studies that they are referencing, which I don't even think that they know that they're referencing, the chimps that are the most alpha male, by the way, we don't live in an alpha beta society, by the way. That's not the way that humans are set up. We're not a harem animal. But even if we were, if you look at the true alpha chimps, the true alpha chimps are the ones that get on with everybody and that everyone kind of not elects to be a leader, but everyone is okay with them leading because they are nice to everyone, they're sociable to everyone, while still being very strong, while still being very decisive. Whereas the chimps that are very domineering, very bullying, eventually, first of all of their mates cheat on them, like constantly. They're always cheating on them. And also, over time, they just become such a bully that the group, usually a few of the less dominant males, they group up together and they overthrow the leader. So that's just a little caveat there. The reason why I'm explaining it is because I want to make sure that you get all of the benefits you have from being a bit more agreeable, whilst also benefiting from the disagreeable traits. The other key insight that I forgot to mention is the fact that if you are more agreeable, it's much easier for people to trust you, because people very clearly see that you value the group identity over necessarily your own feelings, which makes you seem, which has all those notions of self-sacrifice and the fact that you want what's best for people. That makes you much easier to trust, which disagreeable don't really have. But there's a ton of cool stuff that people who are more disagreeable wouldn't really struggle when it comes to boundary setting. The only thing they would struggle with, if you're more disagreeable but you're still struggling with boundary setting, is the way in which you deliver the boundary setting. So it actually makes people come together and makes the bond more close rather than pushing people away. But the mindset shift is this: it's not selfish, it's not bad to do the things that you want to do. It's not a bad thing to have wants that go against the group's need, that go against the relationship's need. This is so fundamental. This is the reason why I put this first, that people have to really take a moment and let that sink in osmosis, whether it's something you have to do shadow work on, or you can do like kind of a guided meditation. But this is absolutely essential moving forward. It's so essential because if you constantly are living with the fear of being reprimanded, like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, it's not good to be doing this, or being guilty, oh, like I shouldn't be doing this, that's something that has to go straight away, which is obviously what this channel was about. I have tons of videos on shadow work, on how to destroy negative beliefs, also some mindset stuff, so please go ahead and watch those videos. That's the first point, right? It's just the easy mindset shift, like, oh, now that I understand this difference between agreeable versus disagreeable people, it's not that it's bad for me to ask this thing. It just means that my mind is a little bit more inclined to being agreeable. Now that I have this framework, I can see that there are people who are more disagreeable. So it's not bad to be more disagreeable. Like, these are not bad people. Also, if you catch yourself judging disagreeable people, that right there is a really clear insight that you have some projections going on, but there's a shadow going on right there, which is great. More stuff to work on. But that's something for you to do in your own personal time with the resources I've given you for free. That moves on to the second point. We've done all this work. We've done all the meditation, we've done all the shadow work. We've really, truly taken in big picture principles, big picture frameworks. We've internalized them. So some stuff should be happening naturally, right? I should just be able to say no to this person, or to say yes to this person, or to really know by intuition what's going right and what's going wrong in this relationship, whether it's social, romantic, or professional related. So why isn't it? The reason why is because you haven't made it personal. You haven't taken these frameworks and actually applied it to yourself. You are living through the map that somebody else has given you. You need to apply the map to yourself. What this means is you need to become intimately acquainted with your own values, with your own principles, with your own ethics. So we can be feeling really good, we can be less stressed, we can have less fear, we can even have an idea of where we want to go because we've gotten rid of blocks, we've strengthened ego states that are really helpful for us. We've also developed skills in the real world as well. Let's not forget about the real world, that's super important. But there's a lack of intimacy there. And this relates to boundary setting, because you can't set a boundary if you don't even know where your boundary is in this area. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. It's very rare that I'm in an area of life where I don't intimately know where that boundary line is. That's how things happen effortlessly, by the way. Because eventually we want to get to this point where we're not actively setting it, it just happens automatically. Every once in a while we might have to do it actively, that's just how life goes, it's okay. But we want it to be effortless, because just by us moving and interacting in the world, these things, these boundaries are being put into place, but that only comes through a conscious competence. We don't get to start unconscious competence. It has to come through conscious competence. So here's how to do that. First of all, part of the reason why your internal world might still be confusing, despite having done all of these things, and also why boundary setting can be confusing, is because you're not working with much granularity within yourself. The first step is you need to have granularity, which means you need to break down your life into themes. It can be social relationships, it can be romantic relationships, and it can be professional relationships. When it comes to boundaries, you can break it down into that. Again, please use the boundaries that make sense for you. I've given you these 3 examples, which you can use. However, remember, they are my examples that make sense to me. Maybe they'll make sense for you too, but it's best to make it bespoke. So now I have different areas with different values. There are overarching principles, but if you're having a trouble with setting boundaries, you need to get more specific. You need to have more granularity, because yes, there are big picture universal principles that we might have, like, or values like do no harm, don't gossip, or whatever these values are for you, right? They are overarching, but at the beginning, so to not confuse ourselves, we need to get more specific. And also what you'll realize is that your value systems are complex adaptive. They adapt given the situation you're in, given the context. There are unifying principles, yes, but when it comes to the specifics, they change. So I'll give you an example. My client is in a relationship. He's seeing her at the moment, or he's seeing this person at the moment, but it's a long distance relationship. He's living with her in a different country right now, but he lives somewhere else. But because of his lifestyle compared to his partner's lifestyle, it means that he's the one that's going to have to be traveling back and forth because he's more flexible, right? However, from the very start, he said that he didn't want to be in a long distance relationship. But because there's love there, he loves her, he likes her, there's a lot of potential in the relationship, he kind of went against his own boundary there. Now, the reason why this happens is because a lot of the time boundaries become confusing when we have two different values pulling away from each other. The value of patience and having real love for somebody versus the logistical value of knowing from past experiences that long-term relationships just don't work. For him, okay, guys, doesn't have to be for you, but for him. You see how these are two different values? But because he hasn't looked at himself in granularity, he hasn't looked at himself in specificity, he kind of vaguely knows he has these two values. First of all, it's very vague, so it becomes confusing in and of itself. But then when you haven't structured them in a certain way, when you haven't structured which one is above and which one is below, then it makes it very hard for you to be able to make a decision. So now, 3 months, 6 months later, he's in a situation which slowly by slowly, inch by inch, the goalposts have been moved, and he's in a logistical situation which he really doesn't like. So we had to go in and we had to put awareness and space onto that, come up with our own values and ethics so that he was able to make a decision, or he's able to make a much clearer decision. Or it's not even about making a decision, it's about setting the boundary. So the second stage is making sure we move from confusion to clarity. We do that with granularity, and we do that by placing things, once we have the more granularity, the different themes in our life, with order of importance. Because then now we have an internal world that we can check in with like that. Because now we have specificity, now we actually have an idea of what's happening inside of us rather than just vague impressions. We actually have like a movie playing rather than just like vague like shapes and sounds and lights and all this kind of stuff. Of course you're going to be confused, and of course the other person is going to be confused of how to treat you because you don't even know how you want them to treat you. The third point is now we actually have to communicate to this person. So first of all, we know the framework of agreeableness versus disagreeableness, and we've accepted that it's not a bad thing to have different wants to the group identity or the relationship identity. Second one, which is arguably the most important, we've got more specific. We've applied all of this granularity, all of this specificity to ourselves, to our internal world. So it's no longer just a mix of impressions and emotions and vague principles and values. We actually have specific, clear-cut values and rules and principles that we've evaluated. Now it's about communicating that, making a space to communicate that. The fourth point we'll be dealing with how to communicate that, so don't worry. But the third stage is, I need to say this because so many people fall into this worldview for whatever reason. We cannot expect other people to know what we want implicitly. We can't expect them to read between the lines. It just creates resentment. We're making them read between the lines to see our values. The reason why we have those values is because we've been through experiences that the other person hasn't even been through. So it's completely flawed. It makes us passive aggressive, makes them passive aggressive, it makes there be more resentment, makes there be a whole bunch of things. So we need to make sure that we communicate. And guys, if this is really interesting to you, I have my one-on-one link below. It's a free call where we just get to know each other and see what it is that you're struggling with, how it is that maybe I can help you, and then the path forward from there. We go over boundaries, but also all of the self-actualization systems that I've been through, all of the shadow work systems I've been through to create a real long-term mentorship together. But here's the fourth point, arguably one of the most important, which is I'm going to give you an actual technical communication skill. So, okay, I have to communicate this. Now what do I do? Well, you're going to be using something called the moral authority frame. Frames are very important. I don't talk about them too much on this channel. Let me know if you want me to. Don't really talk about frames too much. They're very useful and I kind of just do them implicitly. Essentially what you need to know is it comes from Oren Klaff's. Oren Klaff is one of the best deal makers, pitchers that has ever lived. Kind of like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of character, if you don't know who he is. But the moral authority frame is the frame that trumps all frames. It puts you as the moral authority. The only way that somebody can overcome that is by having a stronger moral authority frame than yourself. And here's the frame that you're going to come from. You're going to come from the frame of, I am doing this to better the relationship. Now, this only works if you actually mean it. If you're actually trying to be manipulative, people will just see right through it most of the time. But we're not using it for manipulation. What we're using it for is because we need to give ourselves a little bit of a step up, especially if we've struggled with setting boundaries. We need to give ourselves a little bit of a prop. So in a romantic relationship, what this prop could be is, hey, I love you. I want to make this work. So what I'm about to say is for the good of the relationship. So this is what I'm going to say. It's a moral authority frame. I'm doing this for the good of both of us, for the good of the relationship. Like I said, for order for this frame to work, you have to actually sincerely mean it. If you're just doing something selfishly, then it's not going to carry the same weight. A social relationship could be like, hey, I'm doing this for the benefit of the friendship. I want to make sure that there's no passive aggressiveness between us. I want to make sure there's no friction between us. I've been feeling like there's friction. I'm not saying this to call you out. I'm calling out the friction and I want us to overcome this together. Another example of a moral authority frame. In a professional setting, it can be like, hey, I want to talk to you about this because I feel like there's a tension or there's a friction in the work environment. I want us all to do the best work that we can. I want to make sure that we're all taken care of and we're all productive because we're all here together, we're all part of the same mission. So I have to bring this up. That's very different from kind of starting and being like, hey, this thing isn't working. Here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this thing isn't working. The problem is boundary setting is such a contentious issue. People have such issues around it, both receiving and taking it, because it has a lot to do with freedom and sovereignty. We want to put all of the chips in our corner to make sure that this other person receives it well. Because the more that someone receives it well, the more that strengthens our feedback loop of, oh, hey, setting a boundary is great, especially if you've struggled with setting boundaries to begin with. We want to make sure that that loop gets reinforced rather than get shot down. That's the reason I'm including the moral authority frame, and that's the framing that I want you to go into all of your boundary setting moving forward, okay? Like I said, guys, if this stuff was really valuable, if this stuff is really interesting, I do have my personalized one-on-one coaching link or mentoring link below, where it'll just be a chat, seeing what you're struggling with, seeing the things that you want to improve, and then we can see about how to move you forward. But here's the conclusion, here's to tie it all together. This is the reason that people's external world lags behind the internal world. You can kind of think boundary setting, at least in this very practical way that we've talked about it, as the bridge between having your internal values, your internal ethics expressed into external ethics. What I mean by that is you make sure that all of your value systems are aligned. That's why we go into granularity and specificity. And it's through boundary setting, it's a vehicle to allow your values to be expressed in the world. And this is what so many people lack, because so many people who have been on a long self-actualization journey, they feel so much better, but their external circumstances haven't changed that much. It's because it's not necessarily all just going to happen passively. We have to be more active with it. It can be setting a boundary with certain friendships, in romantic relationships or professional relationships. It can also be setting a boundary with yourself. Hey, I'm not going to eat that thing because it's unhealthy. Hey, I am going to go to this class because I have to go out and be social, even though I'm shy, right? The values of wanting to be social and wanting to get out there supersedes the state of feeling shy. There's so many countless ways that you can use this, guys. So please don't be shy. Get in the comments below as well and ask me questions, and I'll respond to you if that's what you need. But essentially, this is what takes you from being more passive in your journey to being more active. Hopefully this helps.